Hello, slide is clear now.
Yes, sir.
So, now we will start with bone loss and patterns of bone destruction. So coming to the contents, first you should write introduction. Basically, what is how bone resorption and bone deposition occurs. Second, what are the various causes of bone destruction in periodontal disease. Right? So what are the causes of bone destruction? First will be extension of gingival inflammation, then trauma from occlusion, systemic disorders, right? Then factors determining bone destruction in periodontal disease. Now, various bone destruction patterns in periodontal diseases like intrabony defects, reasons causing alveolar bone destruction, conclusion and references. So now, basically, what is periodontitis? Can anyone tell what is periodontitis?
Inflammation of uh, attach supporting structures of the tooth.
Supporting structures of the tooth leading to loss of clinical attachment. There will be apical migration of junctional epithelium along with loss of clinical attachment.
Clinical attachment.
So it depends upon the past pathologic experience. The most important factor which determines the gingival inflammation or the periodontitis is plaque, right? So it depends upon bone formation and bone resorption. There is a coupling between bone formation and bone resorption based on various factors like parathyroid hormones, osteoclast and osteoblastic activity, which Girish already told in the last lecture. So now various causes of bone destruction are extension of gingival inflammations, systemic disorders, and trauma from occlusion. And how gingivitis progresses to periodontitis, it depends upon the composition of bacterial plaque. Like it also depends upon the various plaque hypotheses like specific plaque hypothesis and non-specific plaque hypothesis. There is also ecological plaque hypothesis. Like it depends upon the bacterial composition, cellular composition, and various immunologic activity. Now, how this inflammation spreads from gingiva to periodontal ligament? It spreads through blood vessels, collagen fibers, then alveolar bone marrow, and then into spaces. What is the etiology of trauma from occlusion? Which type of bone loss occurs in trauma from occlusion? Horizontal or angular? Bone loss in trauma from occlusion is there is
Angular.
angular bone loss occurs in trauma from occlusion. How angular bone loss occurs?
Um,
What is the normal pathway of inflammation? And there is one altered pathway of inflammation, right? So what is the
yeah.
normal pathway and what is the altered pathway? What is the normal pathway of inflammation? The inflammation spreads from gingiva into the bone and then into
Both
the periodontal ligament. This is normal pathway of inflammation. And what happens in trauma from occlusion? This normal pathway will become altered pathway. That is, the inflammation spreads from gingiva directly into
the
the
periodontal
periodontal
ligament.
ligament and then into the bone. So this results in formation of infrabony defect and ultimately angular bone loss. So the most important factor which you should know, the most important is radius of action, right? Radius of action, the term was given by Garant and Chaw in 1979. Later it was modified by Page and Schroeder in 1982 based on Verhoek's experiment. There are two experiments given in trauma from occlusion, which I already told. First, Glickman's concept and Verhoek's concept. So the radius of action is dependent on the Verhoek's concept. What is radius of action? That is, bone loss can occur only till a radius of 1.5 to 2.5 mm, right? In close proximity to the plaque. Like angular bone loss occurs in area which is more than 2.5 mm. So what is the radius of action? What you should remember is bone loss, horizontal bone loss can occur only up to 1.5 to 2.5 mm, which is in the close proximity to the plaque. Till 2.5 mm, horizontal bone loss occurs. If the area is more than 2.5 mm, then it results in angular bone loss. Right? It was called as radius of action. The concept was given by Page and Schroeder, and later Dahl reported it in human patients. So this is very important. Radius of action you should know. Now, what are the rate of bone loss? What is rate of bone loss? It was determined in the study was conducted in Sri Lankan tea laborers. The conclusion was that it is 0.2 mm a year for facial surface and 0.3 mm a year for proximal surface. Remember this. What is the rate of bone loss? It is 0.2 mm for the facial surface in a year and 0.3 mm in a year for a proximal surface. Now, this Sri Lankan tea laborers were classified into rapid progression of periodontal disease, moderately progressive disease, and minimal progressive disease based on the loss of attachment. How they classified? If the loss of attachment is 0.1 to 1 mm per year, it was taken under rapid progression of periodontal disease around 8% of the population. Moderately progressive disease is 0.05 to 0.5 per year. Majority of the Sri Lankan tea laborers were under this 81%, and minimal progressive periodontal diseases 0.05 to 0.09 mm of loss of attachment in a year, right? So this you should remember. It was classified into rapidly progressive, moderately progressive disease, and minimal progressive disease based on rate of loss of attachment 0.11 to 1 mm yearly, 0.05 to 0.5 mm, and 0.05 to 0.09 mm. This was the rate of bone loss. Now, coming to the period of bone destruction, it includes the period of activity and the period of inactivity based on these factors, based on inflammation, conversion of T lymphocytes to B lymphocytes, amount of microflora, and bacterial invasion plus host defense. This was already taken in your last lecture. There are period of exacerbation or activity and period of inactivity based on these four factors. Like in TFO, in the absence of inflammation, there is no bone loss, while in the presence of inflammation, two concepts are there, Glickman's concept and Verhoek's concept. This is Glickman's concept. Altered pathway of inflammation and normal pathway of inflammation comes under your Glickman's concept. Why there is no pocket formation in trauma from occlusion? Can anyone tell? In case of primary trauma from occlusion, why there is no pocket formation?
So because of the altered pathway, it is directly affecting the
No. Why in primary trauma from occlusion there is no pocket formation? Why? What is the difference between primary and secondary trauma from occlusion? In the primary trauma from occlusion, your supporting structures are intact, right? So it occurs due to abnormal forces. Surrounding periodontium is normal. In secondary trauma from occlusion, what will happen? Supporting structures are not normal. That is, the normal forces, they become abnormal, right? So why there is no pocket formation in trauma from occlusion? Because the supracrustal fibers remains intact, right? So this is the main reason why there is no pocket formation in primary trauma from occlusion. But due to altered pathway of inflammation, it leads to formation of angular bone loss. Now, these are the various patterns of bone loss, which is the main highlight of this chapter. Now, what is the normal variation in alveolar bone? The radicular bone is at a apical level as compared to your interradicular bone, interproximal bone. This is, you called it as a ideal architecture or positive architecture. It is a normal. Now, it depends upon your interdental septa, your alveolar plates, teeth alignment, root and root trunk anatomy, root position, and root proximity. Your architecture of the alveolar bone depends upon all of this factor. If there is malocclusion, it can lead to flat architecture or negative architecture, or this alteration in the root position. It again leads to changes in the architecture of alveolar bone. So write it down. These are all factors which will determine your architecture of the alveolar bone and ultimately leading to patterns of bone loss. Interdental septa, alveolar plates, alignment of the teeth, root and root trunk anatomy, root position and root proximity. Now, what are the normal uh, patterns? These are exostosis and buttressing bone formation. Exostosis, you know, which mostly occurs on the palatal surfaces. 40% of the exostosis mostly occurs on the palatal surfaces. And there are two types of, where do you get buttressing bone formation? In which stage of trauma from occlusion? There are stages of trauma from occlusion: injury, repair, and adaptive remodeling. Stage 1 is injury, second is repair, and third is adaptive remodeling. So in which stage of trauma from occlusion will you get buttressing bone formation? How will you classify buttressing bone formation? Central buttressing bone formation and peripheral buttressing bone formation, right? So buttressing bone formation also comes under patterns of bone loss. What is lipping? What is lipping? It comes under peripheral buttressing bone formation. So the pictures which are shown below is of buttressing bone formation, right? These are all buttressing bone formation. What is the significance of this buttressing bone formation? What is the significance? It will hamper your normal oral hygiene and it will act as a retentive factor for the plaque. So now this Goldman and Cohen classify the bony defects into suprabony and intrabony defects. This is very important. This intrabony defects are again classified based on the number of osseous walls remaining. How they classified based on the number of osseous walls remaining? One wall defect, two wall defects, three wall defects, and combined defects. So prognosis is better in which type of bone defects?
One
Prognosis
wall.
is better in 3-wall intramonial defects, not 1 wall. 3-wall intramonial defects, where 3 walls are remaining, right? So the prognosis is good in 3-wall intramonial defects as compared to 2-wall or 1-wall intramonial defects, because intramonial defects are classified based on the number of osseous walls remaining. 3-wall intramonial defects may 3 walls are remaining. 2 walls may there are 2 walls, and 1-wall defects only 1 wall is remaining. So 3-wall intraosseous defects or intramonial defects have better prognosis as compared to 2-wall or 1-wall defect. Why? Because if you put bone graft materials, there are 3 walls. So bone grafts are better retained in 3-wall defects as compared to 2-wall and 1 wall. So they have better prognosis of all the intrabony defects, right? 3-wall intrabony defects have good prognosis. Remember it. So this was classification given by Goldman and Cohen. Suprabony and infrabony defects. Again, there was classification given by Richard as, you don't remember the classification, you just remember the other patterns, like what is crater, what are craters, what is ledge, what is crater. Tell me, what is crater? Craters are concavity in the crest of the alveolar bone. Under which type of intrabony defects crater comes? Crater comes under 2-wall intrabony defects. There is one picture of crater. This is what you called it as a crater. Craters are concavity in the crest of the alveolar bone, right? And these are basically, craters are basically 2-wall intrabony defects. Then comes hemiseptum, 1-wall intramony defects, then intramony defect with 3 osseous wall, 2-wall osseous walls, and 1 osseous wall. Then furcation involvement, irregular bone margins, which comes under bulbous bony contours, dehiscence, fenestration, and exostosis. Yeah. So this is how will you check horizontal bone loss on your IOPA. The crest of the alveolar bone is parallel to the line. If you draw from one CEJ to the another CEJ, if you draw a line, when the crest of the bone is parallel to that line, it is horizontal bone loss. Another is angular bone loss. Which will have better prognosis, horizontal or vertical or angular defects? Which type of bone loss will have better prognosis, horizontal or angular?
Horizontal.
No. Horizontal bone loss will not have good prognosis. Vertical or angular defects will have better prognosis as compared to horizontal bone loss. Why? Because if the vertical defects are 3-wall osseous defects or sometimes 2-wall, you can put bone graft materials, and bone regeneration is easier in vertical defects as compared to horizontal defects, because you will be able to put your bone grafts, you will be able to do guided tissue regeneration in cases of angular defects, right? So prognosis will be better in case of vertical or angular defects as compared to your horizontal bone loss. If bone is like flat, where will you put bone graft? That is horizontal bone loss, right? So vertical bone loss and angular defects, your prognosis will be better. So this is your IOPA showing your vertical angular defects, which are more common prevalence rate is 60% of the patient. I mean, it is commonly seen in interproximal surfaces. This is one of the example of three-wall defect, which will occur in your posterior segment. Three-wall defects are more common in your posterior segment as compared to your anterior quadrant. So this is three-wall defects where three walls are remaining, only one wall is missing. So bone grafts and bone regeneration is more visible, or it is you can do bone regeneration more commonly in case of three-wall defects. Two-wall defects, which includes crater and non-crater-like defects, which I already told, and one-wall defects, where only one wall is remaining. They are also called as hemiseptal defect. What is the other name of one wall defect? Hemiseptal defect, where only one osseous wall is remaining, right? So any difficulty in this? How will you classify
No, sir.
intrabony defect? Three wall defects, two wall defects, and one wall defect. The
One
classification
ball
was given
combined.
by and combined defects. This classification was given by Goldman and Cohen, and it was classified based on the number of osseous walls remaining. Three wall osseous defects have good prognosis as compared to two wall and one wall osseous defects.
One wall.
Crater comes under two wall intrabony defects. And you can do both regenerative and resective osseous procedures in case of craters, which will come in your surgical topics. These are combined defects, where the number of osseous walls in the apical area is more as compared to the number of osseous wall in the coronal portion. See, in this, when you probe, what is transgingival probing? Can anyone tell what is transgingival probing? Have you heard the term? Any one of you, have you heard the term transgingival probing? It is not a normal probing. This term is given in your resective osseous surgery chapter. Transgingival probing is the more accurate method of determining the crest of the alveolar bone as compared to your radiograph. What you do in transgingival probing? You insert, first you give local anesthesia, then you insert the probe from the gingival sulcus till it touches the crest of the alveolar bone, and you walk the probe along the crest. So it helps in determining which architecture of the alveolar bone is there, whether it is positive architecture, negative architecture, or ideal architecture, right? So you walk the probe along the crest of the alveolar bone. So it is more accurate method of determining the architecture of the alveolar bone as compared to your radiographic method, right? So you should know the term what is transgingival probing. It is used to check the architecture of the alveolar bone. You insert the probe from the gingival sulcus till it touches the crest of the alveolar bone. And which method is used? Walking method. You walk the method. You walk the probe along the crest to decide whether which architecture of the bone is there. This is called as transgingival probing. Everyone understood?
Yes, sir.
Right? So it helps in determining the architecture of the alveolar bone. These are very important points which I am telling you. These are osseous craters, which I already told. Now these are craters are very common. What is coal? Anyone can tell what is coal? And why the coal is more prone to spread of infection? Why? What is the significance of coal? Gingiva is over na?
So it is a valley like uh,
Depression, valley like what? Coal is basically found in interproximal areas, and why it is more
Inter-
vulnerable to infection, why infection spreads mostly through this interdental areas. Because coal is covered by non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, right? Coal is covered by non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, and that's why it is more prone to infection. This is the significance of coal. That's why infection spreads rapidly through interproximal area, leading to formation of craters and other intrabony defects, right? So vulnerability of the coal, plaque retentive factor, which mostly occurs in the interdental areas, and interdental bony defects, right? So this all will lead to formation of intrabony defects or crater-like defects. Now this is a bulbous bony contours, preoperative occlusal view, and post-operative view, where we do resective osseous surgery and we will smoothen the bony plate. We will smoothen this bulbous bony contour to maintain, so that the patient can maintain proper hygiene. This bulbous bony contour, what will it lead to? It will lead to accumulation of the plaque, right? This is an example of ledge. Ledge are plateau-like bony margins. So in first picture, you see the blunted interdental septa with bony ledges. Bony ledges are plateau-like bony margins, plateau-like margins which lead to accumulation of plaque. In second one, we see the small crater in the interproximal area along with heavy ledge, right? And third is hemisepta with heavy ledge. So ledge is a plateau-like bony margin. This is very important. Reverse architecture. You should know the difference between positive, flat, and negative architecture. Negative architecture you will find most commonly in which type? You will find it in ANUC, acute necrotizing ulcerative periodontitis. What is the difference between positive and negative architecture? Negative architecture, the interproximal bone is at a more apical level as compared to your radicular bone, right? So this is negative architecture. Positive architecture is interradicular bone, interproximal bone is at a more coronal level as compared to your radicular bone. This is positive architecture, flat architecture, and negative architecture. So these are the type of bone architectures which you should remember. Negative architecture is also called as reverse architecture. These are fenestration and dehiscence. What is fenestration? What is fenestration? Can anyone tell? In fenestration, the marginal bone is intact, and in dehiscence, there is complete destruction of the bone. The second one is of dehiscence. First picture is of fenestration, where the marginal bone is intact. So this also comes under patterns of bone destruction. Furcation involvement stage in the progression of tissue destruction, increase with age, factors contributing. But in furcation involvement, you should know the grades of furcation involvement, which was given by Glickman: grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and grade 4. Grade 1 is incipient bone loss, grade 2 is cul-de-sac, grade 3 is through and through, and grade 4 is through and through, along with recession of gingival margin, or it is visible. So This leads to all the patterns of bone loss, right? So alveolar bone destruction is a characteristic sign of periodontal disease, and it is a main cause of tooth loss. So this all patterns which I told you, you should remember. What are the different patterns, right? So coming to classification, from classification given by Goldman and Cohen, which classified into 3-wall, 2-wall, and 1-wall osseous defects and combined osseous defects, suprabony and intrabony defects, along with ledges. What is ledge? What are craters? Craters are concavity on the crest of the interdental bone. Craters are 2-wall intrabony defects, right? Ledge is a plateau-like bony margin, along with bulbous bony contours and exostosis, right? Then comes your fenestration and dehiscence. Then comes your horizontal and vertical or angular defects. Angular defects will have better prognosis as compared to your horizontal bone loss, right? Then comes your furcation involvement, in which you should classify furcation involvement based on Glickman's classification into 4 grades: grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and grade 4. Grade 1 is incipient bone loss, grade 2 is
Cul-de-sac.
cul-de-sac, grade 3 is through and through bone loss, but soft tissue is intact, and grade 4 is
That
Through
through and
and
through
tissue,
without
loss
soft tissue.
along with soft tissue loss.
of
It is visible. So these are grades of furcation involvement. And which probe is used to check the grades of furcation involvement?
Neighbor's probe.
Neighbors probe, right? Neighbors probe is used to check the horizontal component of furcation involvement. Remember, there are two components: vertical component and horizontal component. So vertical component is used, you can check with the help of your Normans Williams probe, while Neighbors probe is used to check the horizontal component of furcation involvement in your Glickman's classification, right? So this finishes your patterns of bone loss. Any problem which you haven't understood? Right. One more thing is transgingival probing. Everyone, you should know what is transgingival probing. It is more accurate method to check the architecture of the alveolar bone as compared to your radiographic method or any other method, because you can directly check it with the your probe. You will directly insert the probe till it touches the alveolar bone, and you will walk the probe along the crest.
Crest.
So you will better understood which architecture, positive, negative, or reverse or flat architecture. Like accordingly, you will plan your treatment. Any problem? Anything which you haven't understood? Now study in detail. You read your book. If you haven't understood, you can ask in your next lecture any point, right? So who will write the attendance?
yes, sir.
Okay. Who will write? Tell me your name.
Surgery.
Okay, fine. So we can discuss if you have any problem in patterns of bone loss, because it is very important chapter from your Viva perspective. Last 1 minute is remaining. Okay, thank you then.